I never thought sharing a room with someone could completely change my life, but that's exactly what happened the summer I turned 22. I had just graduated college and scored this amazing internship at an environmental research station up in the mountains of Colorado. The pay was terrible, but they provided housing, which meant living in these rustic cabins with another intern. When I found out I'd be sharing a room with someone named Miles, I didn't think much of it, just another guy to split the space with for 3 months. I had no idea that by the end of summer, I'd be lying awake every night thinking about him, my heart racing every time he walked into the room. The first time I saw Miles was on move-in day. I'd gotten there early, claimed the bed by the window, and was unpacking when the door swung open. He walked in carrying 2 duffel bags and wearing a faded green t-shirt that had seen better days. What hit me first was his smile. It was one of those smiles that takes over someone's entire face, all genuine warmth and easy confidence. He had dark hair that fell just past his ears, the kind of messy that looked intentional but probably wasn't, and these light brown eyes that seemed to catch every bit of sunlight coming through the window. "Hey, you must be Reed," he said, dropping his bags and extending his hand. "I'm Miles. Looks like we're roommates for the summer." His handshake was firm, and I noticed his hands were calloused, like he'd spent a lot of time outdoors. We made small talk while he unpacked. He was studying ecology at a school back east, loved hiking and rock climbing, had a younger sister he clearly adored based on how much he talked about her. He seemed nice enough, friendly in that easy way some people have. I figured we'd be cordial roommates, maybe grab dinner together occasionally, nothing more. I was so incredibly wrong. The cabin was small, basically one room with 2 twin beds, 2 desks, and a shared closet. The bathroom was down the hall, shared with the other interns. It was the kind of setup that didn't leave much room for privacy, which I thought would be fine. I'd had roommates before. I knew how to navigate shared spaces, how to be respectful of someone else's routine. What I wasn't prepared for was how intimate it would feel, how aware I'd become of another person's presence in my space. The first week was pretty normal. We'd wake up early, head to our respective projects, grab dinner at the communal dining hall, maybe watch something on one of our laptops before bed. Miles was easy to live with. He was neat, considerate, always asked before borrowing something. We started to develop a comfortable rhythm, learning each other's habits and schedules. I'd noticed little things about him, like how he always made his bed military style with perfect corners, or how he hummed while he worked at his desk, these quiet melodies I couldn't quite place. Then came the night that changed everything, though I didn't realize it at the time. We'd both had long days, and I was already in bed, reading on my phone, when Miles came back from his shower. He was wearing sweats and a towel around his neck, his hair still damp. He went to his dresser, pulled out a clean t-shirt, and without any hesitation or self-consciousness, he pulled off his shirt to change. It wasn't a big deal. Guys change in front of each other all the time. But something about that moment made me look up, and I saw him standing there in the lamplight, and I couldn't look away. He had the kind of body you get from actual physical activity, not from a gym. His shoulders were broad, his arms defined but not bulky, and there was this line of muscle down his back that caught the light. I felt something shift in my chest, this sudden awareness that made my mouth go dry. He pulled on his clean shirt and turned around, catching me looking. Our eyes met for just a second, and I felt my face flush hot. I quickly looked back at my phone, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "You okay?" he asked, his voice casual. "You look kind of red." "Yeah, fine," I managed to say. "Just warm in here." He shrugged and climbed into his bed, and within minutes I could hear his breathing even out as he fell asleep. But I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what had just happened to me. I'd had girlfriends in college, a couple of serious relationships that ended amicably when we graduated and went our separate ways. I'd never questioned my sexuality, never really thought about it. But lying there in the dark, I couldn't stop replaying that moment, couldn't stop thinking about the way my body had reacted to seeing him. The next night, it happened again. He came back from the bathroom and changed into his sleep clothes right there in the room. This time I tried not to look, kept my eyes fixed on my laptop screen, but I was so aware of him, of every movement, every sound. My peripheral vision betrayed me, catching glimpses that made my pulse race. When he turned around, I forced myself to keep staring at my screen, but I could feel his eyes on me. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. and there was something different in his voice, something I couldn't quite read. "Yeah. Why?" "You just seem kind of tense lately." "Just adjusting to the altitude," I lied. "Makes me feel weird sometimes." He accepted this explanation, but I caught him watching me more after that. These quick glances when he thought I wasn't paying attention. It made me paranoid and hyper-aware, constantly monitoring my own reactions, trying to act normal when nothing felt normal anymore. I started timing my showers to avoid being in the room when he changed, but it didn't always work out, and if I was honest with myself, part of me didn't want it to work out. Part of me wanted to be there, wanted to see him, even though it terrified me. About 2 weeks in, we had our first real conversation beyond small talk. It was a Saturday night, and most of the other interns had driven into town for dinner and drinks, but we'd both decided to stay back. Miles suggested we hike up to this overlook he'd discovered, watch the sunset. I agreed, telling myself it was just 2 roommates hanging out, nothing more. The hike took about 40 minutes, winding through pine trees and over rocky terrain. Miles led the way, pointing out different plants and birds, sharing facts about the ecosystem with genuine enthusiasm. I found myself watching him more than the scenery, noticing the way he moved with confidence over the uneven ground, the way he'd pause to make sure I was keeping up, the way his face lit up when he talked about something he loved. We reached the overlook just as the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. We sat on a flat rock, our shoulders almost touching, and watched in silence as the colours deepened and changed. It was one of those moments that feel suspended in time, perfect and fragile and impossible to hold on to. "This is incredible," I said, and my voice came out quieter than I intended. "Yeah," Miles agreed. "I come up here sometimes when I need to think. What do you think about?" He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke his voice was softer too. Everything, I guess. Life. What I want to do after graduation. Whether I'm making the right choices. Sometimes I think about how small we are, you know. Like we're just these tiny specks on this massive planet, and most of what we worry about doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. "That sounds kind of depressing," I said. He laughed, and the sound made something warm spread through my chest. "No, it's actually freeing. Like if we're this small and temporary, we should probably just do what makes us happy, right? Stop worrying so much about what we're supposed to do, or what other people think." I wondered if he was trying to tell me something, if there was a deeper meaning behind his words. But when I glanced at him, he was just staring at the sunset, his expression peaceful and open. We stayed up there until the stars came out, talking about everything and nothing, and when we hiked back down in the dark using our phone flashlights to see the trail, I felt something had shifted between us. We weren't just roommates anymore. We were becoming friends, real friends, and that scared me almost as much as the other feelings I was trying to ignore. The changing thing continued, night after night. He never made a big deal about it, never acted like it was anything unusual, but I started to notice patterns. He'd always face me when he changed his shirt, always seemed to take his time about it, and he'd watch me, I was sure of it now, these quick glances to see my reaction. It felt like a test, like he was trying to figure something out, but I didn't know what. Or maybe I did know, and I was too afraid to acknowledge it. One night, about a month into the summer, I came back to the room after my shower and found Miles sitting on his bed, looking at his phone with a troubled expression. "Everything okay?" I asked. He looked up, and I could see something vulnerable in his eyes. "My ex just texted me. She wants to get back together." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "What did you say? I haven't responded yet." He set his phone down and ran his hand through his hair. A gesture I'd learned meant he was stressed. I don't know what to say. We broke up for good reasons, but part of me wonders if I gave up too easily. "What were the reasons?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral even though my heart was racing. He was quiet for a long time, and I thought maybe he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, "I think I wasn't being honest with her, or with myself, about what I really wanted." "What do you really want?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and the intensity in his gaze made it hard to breathe. "I'm still figuring that out," he said softly. The moment stretched between us, heavy with unspoken things. I wanted to say something, to ask what he meant, but I was frozen, terrified of what might happen if I pushed. Finally, he looked away, picked up his phone, and typed out a response. I don't know what he said to her, and I didn't ask. But after that night, something changed. The air between us felt charged, electric, like the moment before a thunderstorm. We started spending more time together outside of the cabin. We'd hike on weekends, grab coffee in the mornings before work, sit together at dinner even when other interns invited us to their tables. People started assuming we were best friends, and maybe we were, but it felt like more than that. At least to me. Every conversation felt loaded with meaning. Every accidental touch sent electricity through my skin. Every shared laugh made my chest ache with something I was finally starting to name. I was falling in love with him. The realization hit me one morning when I woke up before my alarm and found myself watching him sleep. The way the early light fell across his face, the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. I was in love with my roommate, with another man, and I had no idea what to do about it. I'd never felt anything like this before. This consuming awareness of another person, this desperate need to be near him, to know what he was thinking, to close the distance between us. The changing ritual continued, but now it felt different because I understood what it meant to me. Every night he'd come back from his shower and change in front of me, and every night I'd try not to stare but fail, my body betraying me with flushed cheeks and quickened breath, and every night he'd watch me watch him, and I'd see something in his eyes that looked like satisfaction, like he was getting the reaction he wanted. One night, about 6 weeks into the summer, I finally found the courage to say something. He'd just changed his shirt and was about to pull on his sleep pants when I spoke. "Miles." "Yeah?" He turned to face me, and in the lamplight I could see every detail of his face, the slight stubble on his jaw, the way his lips parted slightly as he waited for me to continue. "Why do you do that?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Do what? Change in front of me. Every night. You know I'm watching." The silence that followed felt endless. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I'd crossed a line, said something I couldn't take back, and I braced myself for rejection, for awkwardness, for everything to fall apart. Then Miles smiled, and it wasn't his usual easy grin. It was something smaller, more vulnerable, more real. "Do you want me to stop?" he asked quietly. I should say yes. I should tell him it was making me uncomfortable, that we should respect each other's privacy. But I was so tired of lying, of pretending, of hiding what I felt. "No," I said. "I don't want you to stop." He took a step closer to my bed. "Why not?" "Because I like watching you." The words came out in a rush, and once I started, I couldn't stop. "I like seeing you. I think about you all the time. When you're not here, I'm waiting for you to come back. When you're here, I can't focus on anything else. I don't know what's happening to me, but I can't pretend anymore that this is normal roommate stuff." Miles sat down on the edge of my bed, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body. "It's not normal roommate stuff," he said softly. "I've been changing in front of you on purpose, Reed. I've been trying to get your attention, to see if you felt it too." "Feel what?" "This thing between us." He reached out and took my hand, and the touch sent electricity up my arm. "I've been watching you watch me, and I've been hoping you were feeling the same things I was feeling." My throat felt tight. "What are you feeling?" He squeezed my hand gently, terrified, confused, excited, like I'm finally understanding something about myself that I've been avoiding for a long time. He paused, then added, "I think I've been waiting my whole life to meet someone like you." I couldn't speak. My entire body felt like it was vibrating, every nerve ending on fire. Miles lifted his other hand and touched my face, his fingers gentle against my cheek. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, and his voice shook slightly. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and he leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted. But I didn't want to pull away. I wanted this more than I'd ever wanted anything. When his lips touched mine, soft and tentative, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, but when I kissed him back, it deepened, became more certain. His hand moved to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and I gripped his shoulders, anchoring myself to him. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. Miles rested his forehead against mine, and I could feel him smiling. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he whispered. "Me too," I admitted. "I just didn't know it until recently." We stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing together, processing what had just happened. Then Miles pulled back slightly, his expression turning serious. "I need you to know something," he said. "I've never done this before. Been with a guy, I mean. I've thought about it, wondered about it, but I've never acted on it. You're the first person who's made me want to. You're my first too," I said. "My first everything, really. I've never felt like this about anyone." He smiled again, and this time it was full of relief and joy. "So we're figuring this out together?" "Yeah, together." He kissed me again, slower this time, deeper, and when we finally settled down to sleep, he stayed in my bed, his arm around me, my head on his chest. I could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and I felt safer and more myself than I ever had before. The next morning, waking up next to him felt surreal. For a moment I thought maybe I'd dreamed it all, but then Miles stirred and opened his eyes, and when he saw me, he smiled, that beautiful smile that had captured me from day one. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I replied, suddenly shy now that it was daylight, now that we had to figure out what this meant in the real world. We lay there for a while, just looking at each other, and finally Miles said, "So this is happening, right? We're really doing this?" "I think so. Do you want to?" "Yeah." He said it with such certainty that it eased some of my anxiety. "I really do. I don't know what it means for everything else, for when summer ends, for how we explain this to people, but I know I want to be with you." We spent that day in our own bubble, hiking to places where we could be alone, holding hands where no one could see, stealing kisses when we were sure we were hidden. It felt rebellious and terrifying and absolutely right. That night, back in our cabin, we didn't bother pretending to sleep in separate beds. Miles climbed into mine without asking, and we fell asleep tangled together, and it was the best sleep I'd ever had. The last month of summer passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing certainty. We had to be careful around the other interns, not because we thought they'd be judgmental, but because we weren't ready to share this yet. It was too new, too precious, too ours. In public, we were just good friends. In private, we were discovering each other, learning what it meant to be with someone, to be vulnerable and open and completely yourself with another person. Miles still changed in front of me every night, but now it was different. Now I could watch openly, could appreciate him without guilt or shame. And sometimes watching would turn into touching, into kissing, into losing ourselves in each other. We talked for hours in the dark, sharing our fears and hopes and dreams. He told me about growing up feeling different, not quite fitting in, always sensing there was something he wasn't acknowledging about himself. I told him about my own confusion, about how I'd convinced myself I was one thing when I was actually something else entirely. "What are we going to do when summer ends?" I asked one night, about a week before we were scheduled to leave. Miles was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. "I don't want this to end," he said. "I know it's complicated. We live in different states, we have different lives to get back to, but I don't want to lose this. Lose you." "I don't want to lose you either," I said, and my voice cracked slightly. "These past 2 months have been the best of my life." "Then we figure it out," he said firmly. "We do long distance, we visit each other, we make it work. Because this," he gestured between us, "this is worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for." On our last night in the cabin, we didn't sleep much. We stayed up talking, memorizing each other, making promises about the future. When morning came and it was time to pack up and leave, we both moved slowly, reluctant to let go of this place where we'd found each other. The drive down the mountain was quiet. Miles reached over and took my hand, and we stayed like that the whole way. When we reached the parking lot where we'd both left our cars at the beginning of summer, we sat for a long time, neither of us wanting to be the first to leave. "This isn't goodbye," Miles said, squeezing my hand. "This is just see you soon?" "When?" I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. 2 weeks. I'll drive out to see you in 2 weeks, and then you'll come to me. We'll make it work, Reed. I promise." We kissed one last time, long and deep and full of promise, and then we got into our separate cars and drove away. I watched him in my rearview mirror until he turned and disappeared, and then I had to pull over because I was crying too hard to see the road. That was 3 months ago. True to his word, Miles drove out to see me 2 weeks later. We spent a long weekend together, and it was different being in the real world, in my apartment, without the isolation of the research station. But it was also good. Proof that what we had wasn't just a summer thing, wasn't just proximity and circumstance. It was real. We've been doing long distance since then, and it's hard. Really hard. We video chat every night, we text constantly, we visit when we can. But every time I see him, every time he walks through my door or I walk through his, it feels like coming home. We're planning to move to the same city after he graduates next spring. We're telling our families over the holidays. We're building a life together, one visit and one phone call and one I love you at a time. Looking back, I can't believe how much my life changed in one summer, how one person could help me understand myself in ways I never had before. Miles didn't just change in front of me every night. He changed me, opened my eyes to who I really am and what I really want. And every time I see him now, whether it's in person or on a screen, I'm grateful. Grateful for his courage in pursuing what he wanted, grateful for the way he saw me before I saw myself, grateful for every night he stood there in the lamplight and waited for me to be ready. I never thought sharing a room with someone could completely change my life, but I was wrong. Miles changed everything, and I wouldn't have it any other way.